Well, hello ultra racing fans, and welcome to Ultra Racing Network's coverage of the 2016 STYR Labs Badwater 135. I'm Jarek Wilhelmsen. This year, 97 racers from 21 countries will take on the 135-mile route. They'll start at a negative 283 feet below sea level in Badwater Basin located in Death Valley and climb a cumulative total of 14,600 feet till they reach Mount Whitney Portal. We're going to have some fast competition at the front this year, and it's expected to be a hot year. So let's go ahead and check it out. The top ultra athletes from around the world have converged in the scorching heat of Death Valley. The 2016 STYR Labs Badwater 135 is a challenge of champions, bringing the best ultra runners from around the world. In 120-degree heat of Furnace Creek, the elite field of racers go through the registration process. This year, there will be a lot of competition in the front with a particularly fast field. Race director Chris Kosman has worked hard to make the partnerships and develop the participation that makes this a world-class race.
We have 4 former champions here. So we have Oswaldo Lopez, we have Carlos Saw, we have Harvey Lewis, and we have Pete Kostelnik. Pete is 28. The other guys are all in their 40s. And then we have Jared Fedorov, who won Badwater Cape Fear and Badwater Salton Sea this year, who's would love to win this one too and pull off the triple three-peat. And that would be amazing. So it could be a generational battle out there for sure. We've got the the KG veterans that have been out here for quite a few years that are in their 40s or well into their 40s, and then we've got these two 27, 28-year-olds that are going to be mixing it up in the front too, one of them having won last year. The women's race, so we have our 2 most recent winners. We have Allison Venti from 2014 and then Nikki Wind, who was I think the 3rd woman that year and then won last year. So those 2 are obviously the odds-on favorite, and they've both been putting in big quality miles. But then we also have other really fast women as well, as a woman named Brenda Guajardo, who did the race here quite a few years back. Now she's back, and not only a veteran of this race, but she's won the Nove Colle in Italy 3 times, including overall this year. So she's going to be right up front, and several others as well. So men's and women's race field, most competitive, deepest talent we've ever had.
Let's take a look at this year's route. Following the traditional route, racers will start in Badwater at 283 feet below sea level, the lowest point in the continental United States. From there, they will run north along Badwater Road for 17.5 miles to the first time station at Furnace Creek. Due to the 8, 9:30, and 11 p.m. start, this section will be run at night. They will continue along Highway 190 for 25 miles, rounding the northern side of Tucky Mountain and passing the sand dunes until they arrive at Time Station 2 in Stovepipe Wells. Racers pass through this time station in the early morning hours, and crews take advantage of this opportunity to stock up for the day. From this point on, runners will be above sea level and at the beginning of their first major climb. Racers will fight their way up 4,956 feet in the midday sun over Town Pass. From there, they will descend into an ancient lake bed in the Panamint Valley until they reach the 72-mile mark in the race and Time Station 3 at Panamint Springs. That's where they begin a hot, dry climb up a narrow road with limited crew access, affectionately known as Father Crowley. After 3,000 plus feet of climbing, racers will reach the 90-mile mark, Time Station 4 in Darwin. Here, race teams can expect extremely windy conditions. Racers will get a slight reprieve as they gradually run downhill into the past mining town of Keeler and then into Lone Pine. Lone Pine is not only Time Station 5 and race headquarters, but a symbolic milestone in the race. But then it's all business for the tired runners, where over the next 13 miles, they'll need to climb 5,000 feet to Mount Whitney Portal. It's at an elevation of 8,360 feet and is the finish line for the 2016 STYR Labs Badwater 135. The Badwater Basin, the lowest spot in North America, where temperatures of 120 plus degrees are not uncommon. This is where an elite field of athletes will take on an incredible challenge. The racers lined up with crew looking on. And at 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, the 2016 STYR Labs Badwater 135 had begun. The runners made their way onto Badwater Road and headed north. In this first section of the race, it's 17 miles to Time Station 1 in Furnace Creek. Racers will remain below sea level as the sun sets and evening temperatures drop to the low 80s. Back in Badwater Basin, the 9:30 p.m. start is beginning to arrive. As they arrive, racers and crews prepare their vehicles. Each racer needs to check in with the race medical and get weighed in. Prior to each start, the national anthem is played. For the 9:30 start, the racers and crowd took full advantage of the patriotic attire worn by runner number 52, Sandra Valinas. As 9:30 hit, the second wave of this year's race took off. Shortly after the parking lot cleared, the 11 p.m. racers started to arrive. This is the cream of the crop. They will be the front runners at the end of the race. Also, many returned Badwater veterans here to compete. This year's racers will be wearing tracking devices provided by trackleaders.com. This enables fans at home and race officials to track the race with real-time stats. As the racers gathered at the starting line, it was a who's who in the ultra running world. With several past champions, this was guaranteed to be a fast year. And with the final countdown, it was on. As all three fields in the 2016 STYR Labs Badwater 135 have left the starting line. As the third wave heads out on course, racers immediately begin to fall into position. Crews line Badwater Road, waiting in extreme wind for the first opportunity to support their racer. It gets a bit chaotic as crews try to find their racers in the dark and lights. Down the road at Time Station 1 in Furnace Creek, runners from the first and second waves are coming through and checking in. At this point, some decide to take some time off with their crew.
Thank you.
While others continue their 135-mile adventure into the night. As morning broke, runners were making their way into Time Station 2 in Stovepipe Wells. They check in with race staff
39.
and connect with their crew.
Go.
The sun and heat rise fast, so racers and teams use this time to prepare for the day.
First night's easy. Second night's a bear.
They start the 30 miles to Time Station 3 with a gradual climb. By this time, the three starting waves are thoroughly mixed in with each other. Temperatures are rising at an exponential rate. Therefore, runners have until 10 a.m. to make it above the 2,000-foot elevation mark in order to make the cutoff.
All right. Done, Rosie.
Okay, you got 2 water bottles?
Yeah.
All right, we're good.
They will continue to climb until they reach Town Pass. At an elevation of 4,956 feet. As the race field approaches the summit, the elite racers have taken the lead. So far, throughout the race, Allison Venti has been holding a strong lead in the women's division. As she got closer to the top, she stopped to put on thigh compression and recharge. In the time Allie was down, Brenda Guajardo approached. And when Allie's crew spots her, it's time to move. As the two females reach the summit, Brenda is full of energy with Allie in her sights. And as they descend Town Pass into the Panamint Valley, the race for the lead in the women's division is in full effect. The two top women are within striking distance of each other as both their crews support with the utmost of efficiency. But as they get down into the valley, Allie starts to move away. Up ahead at the front is last year's champion, Pete Kostelnick. He's separated himself from the pack and taken a commanding lead.
Oh, yeah.
How you feeling, Pete?
Good.
Yeah.
A lot better than last year at this point.
He's all business as he's the first runner to arrive at Time Station 3 in Panamint Springs.
Number 1 checking out. We got the chips.
With no time to waste, he's back on the road with his eyes on the finish line. The midday sun beat down on the race field as the runners moved across the Panamint Valley. Allison Vente has put some space between her and Brenda Guajardo by the time she reached Time Station 3 in Panamint Springs. Brenda had to take some time off for some preventive maintenance, which increased that gap.
Just a day in the desert.
Number 76.
Number 76.
Good
I need
job.
to deal with some blisters.
In the male division, the battle for second place was being heavily contested, with Dan Lawson from the United Kingdom leading the chase. Also in the mix were Mick Thwaites of Australia, and past champions Carlos Saw of Portugal and Harvey Lewis of the United States. Harvey, at the rear of the group, recharged in Panamint Springs before moving on. Over the next 18 miles, racers will face a hot, nasty climb known as Father Crowley. They will gain 3,000 feet on their way to Time Station 4 in Darwin. The 2013 Badwater champion, Carlos Saw, was moving steady as he was approaching the 4,000-foot elevation mark at Father Crowley Lookout.
Quick break, yeah. Soup.
He had a quick soup break and was on his way. Slightly ahead, Dan Lawson reached the lookout where his crew was awaiting him.
The short one now. We'll see you in.
After a short recharge, he returned to the chase. Back in Panamint Springs, runners continued to arrive. Nikki Wind, the 2015 Women's Champion, was cooling off with a creamsicle as she checked in. Throughout the race, she had been maintaining third in the women's division, but now is closing the gap between her and Brenda. With an update from her crew, she was back on the road. Racers continued to climb Father Crowley. Up ahead, the front runners were arriving at Darwin. It's at the 90-mile mark in the race and at an elevation of 5,050 feet. Mick Thwaites arrived just 11 minutes behind Dan Lawson. The wind and sun have been taking a lot out of the runners, and Mick takes a moment to sit down. Throughout most of this race, he's been hot on Dan's heels, and he's looking to close that gap. With Carlos Saw approaching, Mick is back on his feet. Pete Kostelnick was on record pace as he led the race field. Just 16 hours in, and he had passed the 100-mile mark in the race. Dan Lawson continued his pursuit in second place, although his pace was slowing. Harvey Lewis had come from behind and was moving strong as he passed Mick Thwaites and catching Dan. Allison Venti was moving steady and sticking to her plan as she came within sight of Mount Whitney. Brenda continued to move forward as her crew switched out pacers. At the front of the field, Pete was approaching Lone Pine. Just behind, Dan Lawson was beginning to slow. After stopping for a recharge from his crew, getting started again wasn't easy. Harvey found his zone and moved past Dan to take second. Running strong, Harvey was now closing the gap between himself and first place. At 122 miles into the race, Time Station 5 is located at the Dow Villa Hotel in Lone Pine and also serves as race headquarters and medical. As Pete Kostelnick came through, he was on pace to beat the course record. The race for second was tight. Leading the pack, Harvey made his way into Lone Pine and pushed through. Dan Lawson was still in the chase. Currently holding third, he was right behind Harvey. And on their heels was Mick Thwaites. With a steady stride, he was determined to stay in the mix. Back in the women's division, Brenda Guajardo had regained her stride as she passed the town of Keeler. Allison Venti was approaching the town of Lone Pine and also on record pace. Over the next 13 miles to the finish line, runners will climb close to 5,000 feet. Harvey was focused as he passed through the last time station, just 3.5 miles and 500 feet below the finish line. Coming in together to time station 6 was Dan and Mick. They were helping each other get up the hill. Allison Venti was holding 5th place overall as she passed through the Alabama hills on Whitney Portal Road. Looking forward to finishing, Brenda was staying strong, keeping her pace up the hill. While this was going on, Pete Kostelnick was victorious. The 28-year-old from Lincoln, Nebraska crossed the finish line in 21 hours, 56 minutes, and 32 seconds, a new course record.
Sticking to my plan, I wanted to go out a little more conservatively than last year, just through stovepipe, but then that more than made up. And I didn't sit down the entire race, and last year I probably took about at least 30 minutes of breaks, so that was a good chunk of the time I made up.
So what's this mean for you now that you've done so well?
Come back in 365 days and do it all over again.
Very good.
And not long after came Harvey Lewis from Cincinnati, Ohio.
How about that, brother?
With a strong second place win and a time of 23 hours, 40 minutes, and 52 seconds.
I really had to work. Like these two fellows got within probably 30 meters of me. And I was just like constantly they just caught up so much ground on me on the mountain. I couldn't do anything about it. And then when it got that close, I just said to hell with it. And I just started running, and I ran for about a mile. And that put distance between us.
Mick Thwaites of Australia and Dan Lawson of the United Kingdom stayed together to the end.
All right.
They crossed the finish line arm in arm, sharing 3rd place with a time of 25 hours, 52 minutes, and 43 seconds.
Pretty simple, really. we were both walking up the mountain, so it just made sense. Yeah. And it's nice to walk with good company. Yeah? So,
we decided to push each other and pushing each other all day, so we just pushed each other up there.
Breaking the course record in the women's division was Allison Venti. Her time and the new women's record was 25 hours, 53 minutes, and 7 seconds.
Some hot tan lines for my wedding dress, that's all I have to say.
And Brenda Guajardo also stayed strong as she crossed the line, coming in second with a time of 28 hours, 40 minutes, and 13 seconds.
Really, the overall goal was to finish without any injuries. because I really want to finish my entire race season, and it's going to test my body. But before we went to the start line, I talked to the crew and I said, there's a couple different times that I want to try for. I would have to have a perfect day to pull it off. It doesn't matter who's in front, it doesn't matter who's behind. It only matters what the clock says. So I don't know if it's possible, but I'd like to try it, and tried it. It wasn't a perfect day, but it was a complete day because it was a great experience. So I'm very happy. I'm very happy.
And rounding out the top 3 in the women's division was Nikki Wind. She crossed the finish line with a time of 29 hours, 6 minutes. To see all the time splits and other Adventure Corps races, check out the Badwater website. Make sure to click on the webcast link to see photos, stats, and live GPS tracking by trackleaders.com. With this tracking, you can replay the race and see how it all unfolded. Make sure to check out Ultra Racing Network on Facebook, also on YouTube, to see the latest Ultra Race Report. Folks, it has been a pleasure bringing you coverage of the 2016 STYR Labs Badwater 135. It was an honor joining the racers and teams on the race course in this long and awesome adventure. Make sure to check in with Ultra Racing Network for more ultra races, and until then, we'll see you out there.